In the relentless pursuit of knowledge, humanity has at times ventured into the darkest corners of its own nature. There is a frontier where the thirst for understanding meets the abyss of morality, a place where the lines between healer and tormentor, scientist and monster, become terrifyingly blurred. It is here, in the cold, sterile rooms of laboratories and the hidden wards of institutions, that some of the most harrowing chapters of our history have been written. Chapters penned not with ink but with the suffering of the innocent, all in the name of progress. I have spent a lifetime observing the intricate and often brutal dance of life in the natural world, but nothing in the wild kingdom can quite prepare one for the calculated cruelty that human beings can inflict upon their own kind. We will journey back to these moments, not to sensationalize, but to understand, to bear witness to the profound cost of unchecked ambition, and to honor the memory of those who paid the ultimate price for a knowledge they never sought. Tonight, we will look into the abyss. We will examine the shadows cast by science, from the chilling eugenics of the Third Reich, where twins were treated as mere specimens, to a 40-year deception in rural Alabama that left men to die from a curable disease. We will witness the manufactured despair of infant monkeys torn from their mothers and listen to the echoes of children whose voices were deliberately broken. This is a journey into the heart of darkness, a solemn reminder of our capacity for both great discovery and immense cruelty. Imagine being a child, identical to your sibling, yet seen not as a person, but as a living puzzle to be solved and then discarded. This was the chilling reality for twins in the Nazi concentration camps. In the heart of a Europe consumed by war and hatred, places like Auschwitz, Dachau and Ravensbrück became more than just prisons. They were laboratories of horror. Here, the sacred oath to first, do no harm, was twisted into a grotesque mandate for suffering, sanctioned by a regime that viewed entire peoples as subhuman, fit only for experimentation. The air itself seemed thick with dread, a place where scientific inquiry had lost its soul. Under the cold clinical gaze of doctors like Karl Klauberg and the infamous Josef Mengele, known as the Angel of Death, the very essence of humanity was systematically dissected. Mengele held a particular fascination with twins, especially Romani and Jewish children. He saw in their identical genetics a unique opportunity to explore the mysteries of heredity, but his methods were monstrous. Children were subjected to excruciating procedures. Media group, archival photo of Nazi doctors injecting children, vintage medical illustration of syringes and vials labelled in German at stock, distribute _equally, injections of diseases, chemicals, and even seawater directly into their veins to observe their reactions. He would perform comparative measurements with a chilling detachment, treating living, breathing children as little more than biological artifacts on a shelf. The barbarity knew no bounds. Live dissections were performed without anesthesia, organs were harvested, and brutal attempts at sex change operations were carried out. The experiments were not confined to twins. Prisoners were. Media group, archival photo of prisoners in water tanks, vintage image of hyperbaric chamber used in Nazi experiments, black and white photo of malnourished prisoners at stock distribute _equally, submerged in ice water to study hypothermia, placed in low-pressure chambers to simulate high-altitude conditions, and deliberately infected with typhus and malaria. These were not acts of science, they were acts of profound sadism, cloaked in the thinnest veneer of medical research, designed to break the body and the spirit in the most agonizing ways imaginable. When the war finally ended, and the gates of these hellscapes were thrown open, the world was forced to confront the depths of this depravity. The Nuremberg doctors' trial brought some of the perpetrators to justice. Figures like Herta Oberhauser, who inflicted gruesome wounds on female prisoners at Ravensbrück, and Voldemar Hoven, a chief doctor at Buchenwald, were convicted. But justice could never erase the scars, nor could it bring back the countless lives extinguished on the altars of a monstrous ideology. Their legacy is a permanent, chilling warning of what happens when science is severed from its ethical core. What if the cure for your illness existed, but the doctors you trusted chose to watch you die instead? For 612 black men in rural Alabama, this wasn't a hypothetical question. It was a 40-year nightmare. In 1932, at the height of the Great Depression, the United States Public Health Service initiated a study in Macon County, Alabama. It was officially titled the Tuskegee Study of Untreated Syphilis in the Negro Male. The subjects, mostly poor sharecroppers, were told they were receiving free health care from the government for bad blood, a local term for a host of ailments. In reality, they were pawns in a deadly game. The researchers' objective was chillingly simple: to observe the full, brutal progression of syphilis from infection to death. The men were never informed of their true diagnosis. Instead, they were given placebos, ineffective ointments, and subjected to painful and deceptive procedures like spinal taps, which were falsely presented as special free treatments. The study's architects watched with detached, clinical interest as the disease ravaged the men's bodies, causing blindness, insanity, heart failure, and eventually, a slow, agonizing death. They were not patients. They were data points in a long, cruel timeline. The most profound betrayal came in the 1940s. Penicillin was discovered and became the standard effective cure for syphilis. It was a medical miracle that could have saved these men, ended their suffering, and prevented the spread of the disease to their wives and children. Yet, the researchers made a conscious, deliberate decision to withhold it. They actively prevented the men from seeking treatment elsewhere, ensuring their study could continue uninterrupted. The pursuit of data was deemed more important than the preservation of human life. For decades, the deception continued, a dark secret held by the very institutions meant to protect public health. It wasn't until 1972, 40 years after it began, that the truth was finally exposed by an Associated Press reporter named Jean Heller. The public outcry was immediate and immense, a wave of shock and disgust that swept the nation. The study was terminated, but for hundreds it was too late. The Tuskegee syphilis study became a symbol of medical racism and ethical failure, a deep wound in the trust between doctors and the African American community. Its exposure led to the establishment of the National Research Act and the creation of institutional review boards, regulations designed to ensure that such a betrayal could never happen again. Can a living creature be broken by loneliness? One scientist set out to prove it by creating a literal pit of despair for baby monkeys. In the mid-20th century, psychologist Harry Harlow sought to understand the nature of love and attachment. His work began with a seemingly simple question: what binds an infant to its mother? Is it merely the provision of food, or is it something deeper, something related to comfort and touch? His experiments, however, would take a turn into profound cruelty, forever changing our understanding of emotional development at a terrible cost. Harlow separated infant rhesus monkeys from their biological mothers just hours after birth. In their place, he offered them two inanimate surrogates. One was constructed of cold, hard wire, but was equipped with a bottle of milk. The other was covered in soft, warm terry cloth, but offered no nourishment. The infant monkey's choice was unequivocal and, honestly, heartbreaking. They would cling desperately to the soft cloth mother, seeking its comfort and reassurance, only leaving its side for the brief moments necessary to feed from the wire mother. It was a stark demonstration that the need for affection was even more powerful than the need for sustenance. But Harlow's curiosity pushed him further into darker territory. He wanted to study the effects of profound isolation. He constructed a device he chillingly named the Pit of Despair, a small, dark steel chamber with slanted walls where the monkeys were trapped in total isolation for up to a year. When they were finally released, they were catastrophically damaged. They were socially inept, emotionally vacant, and often self-harmed. They would stare blankly, clutch their own bodies, and rock back and forth endlessly, incapable of interacting with other monkeys. They were alive, but their spirit had been extinguished. These experiments, while providing undeniable proof of the fundamental importance of love, touch, and social bonding in early development, came at an appalling price. Harlow's work intentionally induced severe and irreversible psychological trauma. It forced the scientific community to confront a deeply uncomfortable question: what are the ethical limits of research? The suffering of these intelligent, sensitive primates served as a grim lesson, highlighting the immense responsibility researchers have towards their subjects, human or animal. The Pit of Despair remains a dark monument to a time when the quest for knowledge ignored the very essence of compassion. Could you scar a child for life with just your words? In 1939, a group of orphans became the unknowing subjects of an experiment designed to do just that. At the University of Iowa, a speech pathologist named Wendell Johnson, himself a person who stuttered, wanted to understand the origins of the condition. He theorized that stuttering was not a physical ailment, but a learned behavior brought on by the anxiety of being labeled a stutterer. To test this hypothesis, he and his graduate student, Mary Tudor, devised a study that would cross a significant ethical line, using some of society's most vulnerable members' orphaned children. They selected 22 children from a nearby orphanage. Half of the children, who already had stutters, were placed in a positive therapy group where they were praised for their fluency and encouraged. The other half, a group of children who spoke perfectly normally, were subjected to a campaign of relentless negative reinforcement. Tudor systematically belittled them for every minor imperfection in their speech, telling them they were beginning to stutter and that they must stop themselves from speaking unless they could do it perfectly. They were effectively being gaslit into believing they had a disability. The results were as swift as they were devastating. The children who had been fluent speakers became withdrawn, anxious, and reluctant to speak at all. They developed the very speech impediments the study was supposedly investigating. Their fluency deteriorated, and they began to exhibit the secondary behaviors of people who stutter, such as shame and self-consciousness. The experiment had not simply observed a condition, it had actively created one. It had taken happy, healthy children and, with nothing more than words, inflicted deep and lasting psychological wounds. The study was nicknamed the Monster Study by Johnson's peers, who were horrified by its methods. Fearing the damage to his reputation, Johnson never published the full results of the study, and the records were sealed away for decades. The children grew up carrying the scars of what had been done to them, many unaware of the true origin of their speech problems and anxiety. It wasn't until 2001 that the story was fully brought to light. In 2007, the state of Iowa awarded 6 of the surviving orphans a settlement of $925,000. But no amount of money could truly compensate for a childhood stolen and a lifetime burdened by the weight of a cruel and calculated experiment. The stories we have recounted tonight are not mere historical footnotes. They are profound and painful echoes that resonate to this day, serving as solemn monuments to the victims of science without a conscience. From the concentration camps of Nazi Germany to the quiet wards of an Iowa orphanage, they reveal a chilling truth. The same human intellect that can map the stars and cure disease can also be turned to instruments of unimaginable cruelty. These events forced a reckoning within the scientific and medical communities, a painful self-examination that led to the creation of the ethical guardrails that protect us today. The Nuremberg Code, the Declaration of Helsinki, the Belmont Report. These are not just documents. They are pacts written in the shadow of past suffering that affirm the primacy of human dignity over the pursuit of data. They are the world's promise that the rights, safety, and well-being of research subjects must always come first. The legacy of Tuskegee, of Harlow's monkeys, of the Monster Study, is a permanent and necessary burden on the soul of science, a constant reminder that the potential for discovery can never justify the certainty of harm. As we move forward, building upon the knowledge of the past, we must carry these lessons with us. True progress is not measured solely by what we learn, but by how we learn it. It is found in the compassion we show, the consent we honor, and the ethical lines we refuse to cross. We must listen for the echoes of the silenced, for in their stories lies the wisdom to ensure that the darkest chapters of human experimentation are never, ever repeated. The pursuit of knowledge must always be guided by the light of our shared humanity.